Maya Chen sat at the back of the lecture hall, her small frame barely visible among the towering alien students. At barely 5 feet tall and weighing less than most of their textbooks, she looked like a child who had wandered into the wrong classroom. The other students often forgot she was even there. As we can see from the galactic records, Professor Zelkin's forearms gestured at the holographic display, the Terran-Zephyrian War lasted only 18 months. A remarkably short conflict considering the scale of destruction. Maya's fingers tightened around her stylus. She kept her eyes down, focusing on her notes while the massive Draknari student beside her shifted uncomfortably. His scales scraped against the desk with a sound like grinding stone. The humans were predictably outmatched, Zelkan continued, his serpentine neck swaying as he spoke. Smaller, weaker, with primitive technology compared to the Zephyrian Empire, yet somehow they managed to turn the tide. Military historians still debate how such a fragile species could have achieved victory. A snicker came from the front row. Crix, a Zephyrian exchange student, turned his massive head toward the back of the room. His 6 eyes found Maya immediately. "Perhaps we should ask our resident human expert," he said, his translator rendering his words in perfect standard. "Tell us, little Maya, how did your people manage such an impossible feat?" The entire lecture hall turned to look at her. 300 alien students, each one capable of crushing her with their bare hands, all staring at the tiny human girl in the back row. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. I don't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible even with the room's acoustic enhancers. "I wasn't there." More laughter rippled through the hall. Professor Zelkin raised one of his hands for silence, but Maya could see the amusement in his reptilian eyes. "Of course, Miss Chen is far too young to have participated in the war," Zelkan said diplomatically. "The conflict ended 23 years ago. Our human student would have been, what, -5 years old?" The laughter grew louder. Maya slouched lower in her seat, wishing she could disappear entirely. She was used to this by now. At the Galactic Military Academy on Centauri Prime, she was an oddity, the only human in a student body of warriors from across the galaxy. "Perhaps," Zelkin continued once the laughter died down, "Miss Chen could share some insights into human military psychology. After all, you are studying xenopsychology as your secondary focus." Maya shook her head quickly. "I really don't know much about military history," she said, her voice still barely above a whisper. "I'm just here to learn about peaceful applications of psychology." This wasn't entirely true, but it was what she told everyone. Maya Chen, the fragile human girl studying xenopsychology and conflict resolution. Maya Chen, who jumped when doors slammed and flinched away from her classmates' casual touches. Maya Chen, who ate alone in the cafeteria and spent her free time in the library's quietest corners. Nobody knew about the nightmares that woke her every night. Nobody knew about the scars hidden beneath her long sleeves. And nobody certainly knew about the small, encrypted datapad she kept locked in her dormitory safe, the one that contained 23 military commendations and a service record that was still classified at the highest levels of galactic security. After class, Maya gathered her things quickly, hoping to escape before anyone could corner her with more questions. But as she reached the exit, a massive shadow fell across her path. Thorax, a Krillian warrior student, blocked her way. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the corridor lights, and his mandibles clicked as he spoke. "Little human," he said, his voice like grinding gears, "you shame your species with your weakness." Maya looked up at him. Way up. Thorax stood nearly 8 feet tall and could probably bench press a small shuttle. His people were legendary warriors, bred for combat across generations. Maya represented everything they despised, small, soft, apparently helpless. "I'm sorry," Maya said automatically, trying to step around him. "I didn't mean to." You didn't mean to what? Thorax's mandibles spread wide in what might have been a grin. Exist? Your people supposedly won a war against the Zephyrian Empire, yet look at you. Pathetic. A small crowd was gathering now. Other students sensed potential entertainment. Maya felt her heart rate increase, but she forced herself to remain calm. She couldn't afford to react. Not here. Not now. Please, she said quietly. I just want to go back to my room. Of course you do, Thorax chittered. Run and hide, little human. Just like your people should have done instead of pretending to be warriors. Maya's hands clenched at her sides, but her face remained carefully neutral. She had learned long ago how to control her reactions. 23 years of practice had made her very good at it. Thorax. The new voice carried enough authority to make the Krillian warrior step back. Professor Valdris approached, her crystalline form refracting the corridor lights into rainbow patterns. Is there a problem here? No problem, Professor, Thorax said, his mandibles clicking with irritation. Just having a conversation with our human classmate. Valdris's faceted eyes shifted to Maya. Miss Chen, are you all right? Maya nodded quickly. Yes, Professor. No problem at all. The crowd began to disperse, disappointed that there wouldn't be a confrontation. Thorax shot Maya one last contemptuous look before stalking away, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. Walk with me, Miss Chen, Valdris said gently. She was one of the few professors who seemed to actually care about Maya's well-being. As a crystalline, Valdris's people were natural empaths, able to sense emotional states through bioelectric fields. They walked in silence for a while, Maya's soft footsteps barely audible next to the professor's musical chiming with each step. Finally, Valdris spoke. You know, I served in the border conflicts 30 years ago, she said conversationally. Before I became a teacher, I saw human soldiers in action during the joint operations. Maya tensed slightly but kept walking. Oh? Remarkable fighters, Valdris continued. Not physically powerful like the Krillians or technologically advanced like the Zephyrians, but they had something else, something that made them incredibly dangerous opponents. What was that? Maya asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Adaptability, innovation, and above all, the ability to keep fighting when any rational species would surrender. Valdris paused at an intersection in the corridor. They also had an unusual talent for psychological warfare. Many enemy forces found themselves defeated before they even realized the battle had begun. Maya felt the professor's faceted gaze on her, as if she was trying to peer beneath the surface. That's interesting, Maya said carefully. Indeed. I often wondered what happened to those soldiers after the wars ended, where they went, what they did with lives that had been shaped entirely by conflict. Valdris's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. It must have been difficult transitioning to peaceful civilian life. I wouldn't know, Maya replied, perhaps a bit too quickly. Like you said, I wasn't alive during any of the wars. Of course. Valdris's tone suggested she didn't entirely believe that explanation, but she didn't press further. Well, I should let you get to your next class. And Maya? Yes, Professor? Don't let students like Thorax discourage you. Sometimes the most powerful warriors are the ones who fight battles no one else can see. Maya nodded and hurried away, her mind racing. Professor Valdris was getting too close to the truth. Maya had been careful to maintain her cover for 3 years now, ever since she had enrolled at the academy under her civilian identity. But cracks were starting to show. She made it to her dormitory without further incident, using her biometric key to access her private room. Once the door sealed behind her, Maya finally allowed her shoulders to slump. She was exhausted, as she was every day after maintaining her fragile persona for hours on end. The dormitory room was small and sparse, designed for practical living rather than comfort. A bed, a desk, a small food preparation unit, and a closet barely large enough for one person. Maya preferred it that way. Too much space made her nervous, too many places for enemies to hide. She walked to her closet and pushed aside her collection of oversized sweaters and loose pants. Hidden at the back was a small wall safe, no larger than a book. Maya pressed her palm to the scanner and waited for the quiet beep that indicated successful identification. Inside the safe were 3 items that she never let out of her sight: a data pad containing her real military records, a small metal token that most beings wouldn't recognize, and a photograph. Maya picked up the photograph first, as she did every evening. It showed 27 human soldiers posed in front of a destroyed Zephyrian battleship. They wore the black and silver uniforms of the Terran Special Operations Division, their faces hard with the experience of too much combat. Maya was in the front row, her appearance so different from her current self that she might have been a completely different person. Lieutenant Colonel Maya Chen, decorated veteran of the Terran-Zephyrian War. Call sign, Ghost, credited with 47 successful deep infiltration missions behind enemy lines. Survivor of the Siege of Kepler Station, architect of Operation Prometheus, the psychological warfare campaign that broke the Zephyrian war machine from within. The woman in the photograph looked nothing like the frightened girl who sat in the back of lecture halls. That Maya had stood 6 inches taller, her posture radiating confidence and controlled lethality. Her eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had killed when necessary and lost no sleep over it. But that was before the neural conditioning, before the hormone suppressors, before the carefully crafted civilian identity that had taken 2 years to construct. Maya set the photograph aside and picked up the metal token. To most beings, it would look like a simple decorative medallion. But Maya knew it for what it really was: a distress beacon, capable of summoning a full Terran Black Ops team to her location within 72 hours. She had never used it. In 3 years of living among potential enemies, enduring daily humiliation and contempt, she had never once been tempted to reveal her true identity. Her mission was too important, because Maya Chen wasn't at the Galactic Military Academy to study xenopsychology. She was there to observe, to learn, and to prepare for the day when humanity might once again need every advantage it could get. The galaxy was changing, new alliances were forming, old enemies were rebuilding their strength, and humanity's victory in the Zephyrian War had made them as many enemies as friends. Intelligence suggested that several species were already planning for the next conflict, and when it came, they wouldn't underestimate humanity again. So Maya endured. She played the role of the weak, frightened girl while gathering intelligence on every species represented at the Academy. She learned their weaknesses, their fears, their tactical preferences. She studied their psychology and documented their military capabilities. And every night she transmitted encrypted reports to a dead-drop communication array in the Kuiper Belt, where Terran intelligence analysts dissected her findings and prepared for wars that might come. A soft chime from her door interrupted her thoughts. Maya quickly returned the items to the safe and sealed it, then checked the door's security monitor. Her heart sank when she saw who was waiting outside. Kaya Vex, an Altarian student from her xenopsychology seminar, stood in the corridor holding a data pad. The Altarians were a tall, graceful species with pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes. They were also natural telepaths, though they claimed to only use their abilities with permission. Maya had always been suspicious of that claim. She opened the door with a carefully practiced smile. "Hi, Kaya. What can I do for you?" "I hope I'm not bothering you," Kaya said, her melodious voice carrying genuine concern. "I noticed you seemed upset after Professor Zelkin's class today. I thought you might want to talk." This was exactly what Maya had been afraid of. Kaya had been trying to befriend her for months, and Maya had been politely deflecting her advances, not because she disliked Kaya, quite the opposite. The Altarian was kind, intelligent, and genuinely seemed to care about Maya's well-being. But kindness was dangerous. Friendship was a liability, and telepaths were the greatest threat of all to someone living a lie. "That's very sweet of you," Maya said, not moving aside to let Kaya enter her room. "But I'm fine, really. Just tired." Kaya's large eyes studied Maya's face with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "You know, you don't have to pretend with me," she said softly. "I can sense your emotional state, Maya. You're in pain, constant, deep pain that you're working very hard to hide." Maya's blood turned to ice. She forced her expression to remain neutral, but internally, alarms were screaming. If Kaya could sense her true emotional state, how much else could she detect? "I don't know what you mean," Maya said, her voice steady. "I'm just a little homesick, that's all." "Is that what you call it?" Kaya stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Maya, I've been watching you for months, the way you flinch from sudden noises, the way you position yourself with your back to walls, the way you assess every room you enter like you're planning escape routes." Maya's hand moved instinctively to her side, where a combat knife would have been if she were wearing her military gear instead of civilian clothes. She caught herself and forced her hand to relax. "I think you're mistaken," Maya said carefully. "I'm just naturally cautious." Kaya shook her head sadly. "That's not caution, Maya. That's hypervigilance. It's a trauma response. Someone hurt you badly and you've never recovered from it." If only she knew, Maya thought. But trauma implied damage, weakness, something broken that needed fixing. What Maya carried wasn't trauma. It was experience, hard-earned knowledge about how the galaxy really worked, about what people were capable of when they thought no one was watching. "Even if that were true," Maya said, "I don't see how it's any of your business." The words came out harsher than she intended, and she saw Kaya flinch as if slapped. Maya immediately felt guilty, but she couldn't afford to show weakness. Not now. "You're right," Kaya said quietly. "I'm sorry for prying, I care about you, Maya. You seem so alone." "I prefer it that way," Maya replied, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. Kaya nodded sadly and turned to leave. But as she walked away, she called back over her shoulder. "If you ever change your mind, you know where to find me. And Maya, whatever happened to you in the past, you don't have to carry it alone forever." Maya closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. This was getting dangerous. Too many people were starting to notice inconsistencies in her cover story. Professor Valdris, with her talk of human warriors, Kaya, with her telepathic insights into Maya's psychological state. She needed to be more careful. The mission was too important to compromise over personal feelings or moment of weakness. Maya returned to her desk and activated her encrypted communication array. It would take several hours for her message to reach the dead drop, but she needed to report the developing situation to her handlers. As she typed, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the darkened window. The face looking back at her was young, soft, unmarked by the violence that had shaped her real life. The biomedical treatments had worked perfectly, reversing the physical changes that 2 decades of military service had wrought on her body. But they couldn't change what was inside her head. They couldn't erase the memories of battlefields soaked in alien blood, or the faces of enemies she had killed to protect humanity's future. They couldn't undo the training that made her automatically calculate the most efficient way to disable every person she met. Maya finished her report and sent it on its way across the galaxy. Then she prepared for another night of pretending to be someone she wasn't, while the galaxy slowly prepared for wars that most of its inhabitants couldn't even imagine. Tomorrow, She would return to her classes and endure more contempt from her fellow students. She would sit quietly in the back row and take notes while professors discussed military history that she had lived through firsthand. She would smile weakly when aliens made jokes about human weakness, never letting them see the predator that lurked beneath her carefully constructed facade. Because Maya Chen had a job to do, and she would do it no matter what it cost her personally, even if it meant spending the rest of her life pretending to be the fragile human girl instead of the war legend she really was. The alarm that woke Maya wasn't the gentle chime of her dormitory's wake-up system. It was the harsh, urgent wail of the Academy's emergency alert protocol. Maya's eyes snapped open instantly, her body already moving before her conscious mind fully processed the threat. In less than 3 seconds, she was out of bed and dressed in basic clothing, her hands automatically checking for weapons that weren't there. Old habits died hard, especially when they had kept you alive through 2 decades of war. The corridor outside her room was chaos. Students poured from their dormitories in various states of dress and panic. The massive Draknari were roaring questions in their native tongue, while the delicate Etherian floated in distressed clusters, their bioluminescent patches flickering in agitated patterns. Maya moved against the flow of students, her training automatically directing her toward the source of the disturbance rather than away from it. She needed to know what was happening, needed to assess the threat and determine if it posed any risk to her mission. "Maya," Kaya's voice cut through the din. The Altarian appeared at her side, her pale blue skin flushed with adrenaline. "Thank the stars you're safe. Did you hear what happened?" "No," Maya replied, allowing concern to show in her voice while keeping her body language appropriately civilian. "Is everyone all right?" "There was an attack," Kaya said, grabbing Maya's arm to pull her along with the crowd. "Someone broke into the Academy's secure archives. The defense systems killed one intruder, but at least 2 others escaped." Maya's blood turned cold. The secure archives contained classified information from across the galaxy, including detailed files on current and former military personnel. If someone had accessed her real records, "Do they know who was responsible?" Maya asked, working to keep her voice level. "Not yet. But Administrator Vrex is calling an emergency assembly. All students and faculty are required to attend." They were herded into the Academy's central amphitheater, a massive space designed to accommodate the diverse physical requirements of hundreds of alien species. Maya found herself squeezed between a cluster of nervous Zephyrians and a group of Krillian warriors who were discussing the attack in their clicking, chittering language. Administrator Vrex took the central platform, his multiple eyes scanning the assembled crowd. The Vorthak were an ancient species, one of the founding members of the Galactic Alliance, and Vrex carried himself with the authority of centuries. "Students and faculty," his voice boomed through the amphitheater's speakers, "at approximately 0300 hours this morning. Our security systems detected an unauthorized breach of the archive levels. 3 intruders bypassed our outer defenses using sophisticated cloaking technology." Maya listened intently, her analytical mind automatically cataloging details. Cloaking technology suggested either Etherian or Zephyrian involvement, as they were the only species known to have mastered personal stealth fields. The timing indicated detailed knowledge of the Academy's security rotations. "The intruders accessed Terminal 7 in Archive Section C before our automated defenses could respond. 1 intruder was eliminated, but the others escaped with an unknown quantity of classified data." A murmur of unease rippled through the crowd. Archive Section C contained personnel files dating back 50 years, including records from all the major galactic conflicts. Maya's military service record would definitely be stored there. "As a precautionary measure," Administrator Vrex continued, "all classes are suspended pending a full security review. Students are confined to dormitory levels except for meals and emergency situations." Anyone with information about this incident is required to report to security immediately. As the assembly dispersed, Maya felt eyes on her. She turned to find Thorax staring at her with undisguised suspicion. The Krillian warrior had been watching her more carefully since their encounter in the corridor, and now his mandibles were clicking in a pattern she recognized as aggressive curiosity. "Interesting timing," Thorax said as he approached, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the amphitheater's lights. "Someone steals military records just days after our discussion about human weakness in warfare." "I don't see what one has to do with the other," Maya replied carefully, maintaining her pose as the nervous, fragile girl. "Don't you?" Thorax's head tilted, studying her with compound eyes that missed nothing. "Tell me, little human, what do you know about Archive Section C?" Maya shrugged, a gesture she had practiced to look appropriately helpless. "Nothing at all. I've never even been to the archive levels. I don't have clearance for classified materials." This was technically true. Maya Chen, the registered student, had no such clearance. But Lieutenant Colonel Maya Chen had authorized access to files far more classified than anything stored in the Academy's archives. "Of course you don't," Thorax clicked dismissively. But Maya could see him filing away her response for future reference. The Krillians were natural investigators, bred for tactical analysis and threat assessment. If Thorax decided she was worth investigating, her carefully constructed cover could be in serious jeopardy. Over the next few days, the Academy buzzed with rumors and speculation. Some students claimed the intruders had been Zephyrian spies seeking intelligence on Alliance military capabilities. Others suggested it was a criminal operation looking to sell classified data on the black market. Maya knew better. Professional intelligence operatives didn't break into archives looking for random data to sell. They came looking for specific information, and they were willing to kill to get it. The question was, what information were they after, and did it involve her? The answer came on the third day of lockdown, when Maya returned to her dormitory room to find her door unlocked. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Maya's civilian identity should have no enemies, no reason for anyone to break into her room. But as she stood in the corridor, her enhanced senses picked up subtle signs of intrusion. A faint scent that didn't belong. Microscopic scratches on the door frame, where tools had been used, the almost imperceptible shift in air currents that indicated someone had recently passed through. Maya waited, listening carefully for any sound from within her room. When she heard nothing, she activated her door chime as if she were entering normally, then stepped inside with the cautious movements of someone who had survived too many ambushes to be careless now. Her room appeared untouched, but Maya's trained eye immediately spotted the evidence. Someone had searched her belongings with professional thoroughness, leaving everything exactly as they found it, but not quite accounting for the subtle placement cues Maya had left behind. The searcher had been good, but not good enough to fool someone with Maya's experience. She went through the motions of normal evening routine while conducting her own investigation. Her computer showed no signs of tampering, her clothing remained in the same positions she had left them, and her academic materials were untouched. But when Maya opened her wall safe, her heart stopped. The safe itself was undisturbed, its biometric locks showing no signs of tampering. But the photograph of her military unit, the one she looked at every night, was facing the wrong direction. Someone had been inside her safe, someone with access to biometric spoofing technology sophisticated enough to fool Terran security systems, and they had handled the one piece of evidence that could connect Maya Chen, frightened student, to Lieutenant Colonel Maya Chen, decorated war veteran. Maya's hands trembled as she removed the photograph, searching for any sign that it had been scanned or copied. The image appeared unchanged, but with current technology, a complete data capture could be performed in milliseconds without leaving any trace. Her secure communication array showed no signs of intrusion, but Maya had to assume her cover was blown, which meant she had two choices: abort her mission and request immediate extraction, or continue playing her role while preparing for whatever was coming. As Maya weighed her options, her door chimed. She quickly sealed the safe and activated the entry monitor, expecting to see campus security or perhaps another suspicious visit from one of her classmates. Instead, she found Professor Valdris standing in the corridor, her crystalline form refracting the hallway lights into worried patterns. "Miss Chen," Valdris said when Maya opened the door. "May I come in? I have something important to discuss with you." Maya had no choice but to step aside and let the professor enter. Valdris moved with the careful precision of her species, her faceted body creating gentle musical tones with each step. "I'll be direct," Valdris said once Maya had closed the door. "Someone accessed your student file 3 days ago, shortly after the archive break-in. My office received an official inquiry about your academic performance and psychological profile." Maya felt ice form in her stomach, but she kept her expression carefully neutral. "I don't understand. Who would want information about me?" "That's exactly what I was hoping you could tell me." Valdris's multifaceted eyes studied Maya's face intently. "The inquiry came through official channels, but the authorization codes were unusual, as if someone with significant authority was trying very hard to learn everything they could about one seemingly unremarkable human student." "Maybe it's just a routine background check," Maya suggested weakly. "For security clearance or something." "Perhaps." Valdris moved closer, her empathic abilities no doubt reading Maya's emotional state. "But I've been a teacher for 37 years. Miss Chen, I've learned to recognize when a student is in danger." Maya wanted to reassure the professor that she could take care of herself, that she had survived far worse threats than whoever was investigating her now. But Maya Chen, the student, wouldn't know how to handle this kind of situation. "What do you think I should do?" Maya asked, allowing fear to color her voice. "Be very careful," Valdris replied, "and consider the possibility that your past might not be as buried as you think it is." After the professor left, Maya sat on her bed and stared at the wall, her mind racing through possibilities. Someone had connected her student identity to her military record. The question was who and what they intended to do with that information. Her encrypted communicator remained silent. No extraction orders, no abort codes, no indication that her handlers at Terran Intelligence were even aware of her compromised position. Maya was on her own, exactly as she had been trained to be. The next morning brought a new development. Maya was walking to the library when she was intercepted by 2 Academy security officers, a Vorthak and a Draknari, both armed and clearly taking their assignment seriously. "Miss Chen," the Vorthak officer said politely, "Administrator Vrex requires your presence immediately." Maya's heart rate increased, but she maintained her nervous civilian demeanor. "Is there a problem? Am I in trouble?" "Just a routine interview," the Draknari officer added, though his tone suggested it was anything but routine. They escorted her through corridors she had never seen before, deep into the Academy's administrative section. Maya memorized every turn, every security checkpoint, every potential escape route. Old habits that might mean the difference between life and death. Administrator Vrex was waiting in his office along with 2 other beings Maya didn't recognize. One was a tall, elegant Etherian whose bioluminescent patches pulsed in complex patterns. The other was something Maya had never seen before, humanoid but clearly artificial, with silver skin and eyes that glowed with internal light. "Miss Chen," Administrator Vrex said formally, "allow me to introduce Agent Lyra of Etherian Intelligence and Construct Designation Omega-7 of the Synthetic Collective. They have some questions for you." Maya felt her throat tighten. Etherian Intelligence was notorious for their psychological interrogation techniques. and the synthetic collective's constructs were living computers capable of processing information at rates that defied understanding. Questions about what? Maya asked, putting just the right amount of confusion and fear into her voice. Agent Lyra stepped forward, her graceful movements hypnotic and subtly threatening. About your presence at this academy, Miss Chen. About your academic performance, which is remarkably advanced for someone with no prior military training, and about certain irregularities in your background that have come to our attention. The construct's glowing eyes fixed on Maya with mechanical precision. Database analysis indicates a 94.7% probability that the individual designated Maya Chen, student, is not genetically identical to the individual designated Maya Chen as recorded in Terran civilian archives. Maya's blood turned to ice, but she forced herself to look confused rather than terrified. I don't understand what any of this means. What irregularities? I'm just a student. Are you? Agent Lyra moved closer, her bioluminescent patches shifting to colors Maya recognized as hypnotic patterns. Because our investigation suggests that Maya Chen, the 19-year-old psychology student from Terra Colony 7, never actually existed until 3 years ago. Maya felt the walls closing in around her. These beings had resources and capabilities far beyond what she had anticipated. If they had discovered the constructed nature of her civilian identity, how much else did they know? I think there's been some kind of mistake, Maya said carefully. I've always been who I am. I have birth records, school transcripts, medical files, all of which are remarkably consistent, Construct Omega-7 interjected, its voice carrying no emotion whatsoever. Consistently artificial, created by someone with access to advanced identity fabrication technology. Administrator Vrex leaned forward in his chair, his multiple eyes reflecting genuine concern. Miss Chen, if you are in some kind of protective custody, if someone has given you a new identity for your own safety, we need to know. The Academy has a responsibility to ensure student welfare. For a moment, Maya was tempted to tell them everything. These beings weren't her enemies. They were representatives of species allied with humanity. If she explained her real mission, they might even be willing to help. But her training held firm. Trust no one. Reveal nothing. Complete the mission at any cost. I really don't know what you're talking about, Maya said, allowing her voice to break slightly. I'm just Maya Chen from Colony 7. I came here to study xenopsychology because I want to help improve relations between species. I don't understand why anyone would think I'm someone else. Agent Lyra's bioluminescent patches shifted to patterns Maya didn't recognize, but she could sense the Etherian's growing frustration. Very well, we will continue this investigation through other means. As they dismissed her, Maya caught Construct Omega-7's final comment. Recommend continuous surveillance. Subject's behavioral patterns suggest advanced counterinterrogation training inconsistent with claimed background. Maya left the administrator's office with her cover identity hanging by a thread and hostile intelligence services actively investigating her. But she had bought herself time, and time was all she needed to complete her mission. That evening, as she sat in her room encoding what might be her final intelligence report, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She was done pretending to be weak. If they wanted to investigate Maya Chen, the frightened student, they were welcome to try. But if they pushed too hard, they might discover that they had been hunting something far more dangerous than they realized. The war legend was still buried beneath layers of conditioning and careful disguise, but she was still there. And if Maya's enemies made the mistake of threatening the mission she had sacrificed everything to complete, they would learn why human beings had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most terrifying opponents. Maya sealed her report and transmitted it into the void, then began preparations for what might be her final performance as the fragile human girl. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats to her carefully constructed identity. But Lieutenant Colonel Maya Chen had faced worse odds before, and she had never yet failed to complete a mission, no matter what it cost her personally. The attack came at 0247 hours, just as Maya had predicted it would. She had been lying in her dormitory bed for the past 6 hours, appearing to sleep while actually monitoring the Academy's security frequencies through her encrypted receiver. The hostile intelligence services investigating her weren't known for patience, and Maya had learned long ago that cornered predators always struck in the dark. The first sign of trouble was the subtle shift in the building's atmospheric recycling system, a change so minor that none of her sleeping classmates would notice, but obvious to someone trained to detect environmental anomalies. Someone had introduced a sleep-inducing gas into the dormitory's air supply. Maya had been holding her breath since the first hint of foreign chemicals reached her enhanced senses. Moving with the fluid silence that had kept her alive through countless operations, Maya rolled out of bed and activated the emergency oxygen supply hidden in her room's ventilation system. The tiny device would give her 30 minutes of clean air, more than enough for what she had to do. Through her room's security monitor, Maya watched armed figures move through the corridors with professional precision. 6 beings in full combat armor, using advanced stealth technology to avoid the Academy's sensors. Their equipment was military-grade, their movements coordinated, their intent unmistakably lethal. These weren't intelligence operatives looking to ask more questions. These were assassins, sent to eliminate a problem before it could become a larger threat. Maya allowed herself a cold smile as she prepared for battle. After 3 years of pretending to be helpless, it would be almost therapeutic to remind the galaxy why humans were feared across the stars. Her first priority was protecting the innocent students sleeping around her. The gas would keep them unconscious for hours, but stray weapons fire could kill them just as easily as any intentional attack. Maya activated her emergency beacon, not the one that would call for extraction, but the one that would alert Academy security to a code black scenario. Then she armed herself. From her wall safe, Maya retrieved items that would have shocked her classmates. A molecularly bonded combat knife that could cut through starship armor, a compact plasma pistol with enough stopping power to drop a Draknari warrior, and a set of tactical gear that transformed her from fragile student into lethal operative in less than 60 seconds. The biomedical treatments that had changed her appearance were designed to be temporary. Under extreme stress, her body would revert to its natural state, the one shaped by 20 years of constant warfare. Maya triggered the biochemical cascade with a small injection from her medical kit, feeling her muscles expand and her reflexes sharpen as synthetic limitations were stripped away. For the first time in 3 years, Lieutenant Colonel Maya Chen stood at her full height of 5 feet 10 inches, her frame filled out with the lean muscle of a professional killer. The assassins reached her door exactly on schedule. Maya watched through her security monitor as they prepared to breach her room, their body language confident and unhurried. They expected to find a sleeping student, not a war veteran waiting in tactical position behind improvised cover. The door exploded inward with military-grade breaching charges, filling Maya's room with smoke and debris. The first assassin through the doorway was a Zephyrian in powered armor, his weapon already tracking for targets. He never had a chance to fire. Maya's knife took him in the throat between his armor plates, the molecularly bonded edge sliding through alien flesh like it was liquid. She twisted and withdrew in the same motion, spinning away from his falling body as his blood painted her wall in arterial sprays. The second assassin, a Krillian warrior even larger than Thorax, had time to register that their target was awake and armed before Maya's plasma pistol burned a hole through his chitinous exoskeleton. The smell of cooked meat filled the small room. "Target is active!" The third assassin, another Zephyrian, was screaming into his communication system. "Repeat! Target is awake and armed. This is not a civilian extraction. Maya smiled coldly as she reloaded her weapon. No, she said, in a voice that carried none of the weakness her classmates were used to hearing. It's not. The remaining 4 assassins tried to coordinate their assault, using standard military tactics to clear a hostile room. But Maya had been fighting these same tactics for 2 decades, and she knew how to turn them against their users. She triggered the room's emergency lighting, plunging everything into strobing red illumination that would disorient most species while leaving her enhanced vision unaffected. Then she went to work. The Etherian assassin died when Maya's knife found the neural cluster at the base of his graceful neck. The artificial construct lasted longer, its synthetic reflexes almost matching Maya's enhanced speed, but its programming hadn't been updated with information about human combat capabilities. Maya's plasma bolt turned its head into molten metal and sparking circuitry. The last 2 assassins, both Vorthak professionals who should have known better than to accept a contract on a human target, tried to retreat into the corridor. Maya pursued them with the relentless efficiency of a hunting predator. One made it as far as the dormitory's central hub before Maya's knife found his spine between armor plates. The other actually managed to activate a distress beacon before Maya put 3 plasma bolts center mass and dropped him beside the emergency stairwell. Total engagement time, 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Maya stood among the bodies of her would-be killers, her breath steady and her hands rock solid despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. This was who she really was, not the frightened girl in lecture halls, but the woman who had ended the Zephyrian War with nothing but psychology, determination, and a willingness to do whatever was necessary. Alarms were wailing throughout the academy now as security forces responded to her beacon. Maya quickly activated her room's emergency containment field to contain the gas before it could spread to other levels, then began the process of sanitizing the scene. The bodies couldn't be moved, but she could at least ensure that nothing in her room would reveal classified information about her real mission. Maya activated the thermite charge hidden in her wall safe, reducing her military records and communication equipment to slag. When Academy security finally breached her containment field, they found Maya Chen huddled in the corner of her room, shaking and sobbing as she stared at the bodies scattered around her. They just started shooting, she whispered to the first responder who reached her. I hid behind my desk and they just kept shooting at everything. Why would anyone want to hurt students? It was a masterful performance, made believable by the fact that Maya allowed herself to process the genuine emotional exhaustion that came after combat. The shaking was real, not from fear, but from the biochemical aftershocks of battle. The tears were authentic, born from 3 years of suppressed rage and frustration, finally finding release. Administrator Vrex arrived within minutes, his multiple eyes taking in the carnage with professional assessment. "Miss Chen," he said gently, "are you injured?" "I don't think so," Maya replied, allowing her voice to sound weak and confused. "I was asleep when they broke in. The noise woke me up and I hid. Why would anyone do this?" Agent Lyra and Construct Omega-7 appeared shortly afterward, their investigation equipment already scanning the scene for evidence. Maya watched them work while maintaining her traumatized civilian facade, curious to see how they would interpret what they found. "Weapons fire patterns are consistent with military-grade plasma discharge," the construct reported. 6 hostiles, all armed with professional equipment. Cause of death for all subjects. Close-quarters combat injuries inflicted by edged and energy weapons. Agent Lyra's bioluminescent patches were flickering in patterns Maya recognized as deep confusion. "This doesn't make sense," she said to Administrator Virex. 6 armed professionals don't kill each other in a firefight this clean. Someone else was involved. "But Miss Chen was the only being found alive in this room," Vrex pointed out, "and she clearly couldn't have—" The Etherian agent's patches suddenly blazed with realization. Unless Miss Chen isn't who we think she is. Maya felt her carefully constructed cover beginning to crumble, but she held her performance. I don't understand what you're talking about. I was hiding behind my desk the whole time. I didn't see who killed them. Construct Omega-7's glowing eyes fixed on Maya with mechanical precision. Blood spatter analysis indicates combat took place throughout this room. Probability that a single individual could have eliminated 6 armed professionals. Statistically negligible unless said individual possessed advanced military training. That's impossible, Administrator Vrek said firmly. Miss Chen is a psychology student. Her academic records show no combat experience whatsoever. Her academic records, Agent Lyra said quietly, which we have already established, are fabricated. The silence that followed was broken by the arrival of someone Maya hadn't expected to see. Professor Valdris, her crystalline form refracting the emergency lighting into worried patterns. Maya, Valdris said gently, I think it's time to stop pretending. Maya looked up at the professor, allowing confusion to show in her expression. Professor? I don't know what you mean. I think you do. Valdris moved closer, her empathic abilities no doubt reading the complex layers of Maya's emotional state. I've been studying human psychology for 3 decades, child. I know the difference between a trauma victim and a trained warrior trying very hard to appear helpless. Maya felt the weight of too many eyes, too much scrutiny, too many questions she couldn't answer without revealing everything. Her mission was blown, her cover identity compromised beyond repair. But she still had one card left to play. I want to contact the Terran embassy, Maya said quietly, dropping her frightened student act for the first time in 3 years. I want to invoke my rights as a citizen of the Terran Federation. Administrator Vrex's multiple eyes widened in surprise. Miss Chen, if you are requesting diplomatic protection, I am. Maya stood up, her posture no longer that of a cowering victim, but of someone accustomed to command. And I'm requesting immediate communication with Terran intelligence. The words hung in the air like a confession. Agent Lyra's bioluminescent patches exploded in patterns of triumph and vindication, while Construct Omega-7 began processing implications at quantum speeds. Terran intelligence, Administrator Vrex repeated slowly. Miss Chen, are you telling us that you are an operative of the Terran Federation? Maya looked around the room at the beings who had been hunting her, studying her, trying to uncover her secrets. Then she made a decision that would change everything. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Maya Chen, Terran Special Operations Division, Service Number 7749 Delta Tango. I am operating under deep cover pursuant to Article 15 of the Galactic Intelligence Cooperation Treaty. These beings attempted to assassinate me while I was engaged in lawful intelligence-gathering operations. The room erupted in controlled chaos. Agent Lyra was already communicating with her handlers in rapid Etherian, while Construct Omega-7 processed this new information and began correlating it with everything they had observed about Maya's behavior. Administrator Vrex looked like he had been struck by lightning. Lieutenant Colonel, he said faintly, but you're just a student. You're 19 years old. No, Maya said, allowing her natural voice to emerge for the first time in 3 years, deeper, more confident, carrying the authority of someone who had commanded soldiers in battle. I'm 31 years old, and I've been gathering intelligence on potential threats to galactic stability for the past 3 years. Professor Valdris stepped forward, her crystalline form chiming with what sounded almost like laughter. I knew it, she said. I knew there was more to you than you were showing. The way you moved, the way you thought, the way you analyzed tactical situations during class discussions. You weren't learning about military history. You were remembering it. Maya nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief at finally dropping her facade. I participated in Operation Prometheus during the Zephyrian War. I was part of the psychological warfare campaign that broke their command structure. Operation Prometheus, Agent Lyra breathed. That was you? The ghost operative who convinced an entire Zephyrian battle group to surrender without firing a shot? Among other things. Maya's smile was cold and sharp, nothing like the nervous expressions her classmates were used to seeing. I've been monitoring student capabilities, analyzing species-specific weaknesses, and preparing comprehensive intelligence reports on galactic military readiness. My handlers at Terran Intelligence will be very interested to know that hostile agents were willing to commit murder to stop my work. Construct Omega-7's glowing eyes had been analyzing Maya continuously during this revelation. Physical transformation consistent with biochemical enhancement reversal, it reported. Subject's current biometric profile matches no known databases, but combat efficiency demonstrated against 6 armed hostiles suggests advanced military conditioning. The question, Administrator Vrex said slowly, is what we do now. If you are indeed a Terran intelligence operative, this incident creates significant diplomatic complications. Maya looked at the bodies scattered around her room, then back at the beings who had spent weeks investigating her. I suggest we treat this as what it was, an assassination attempt against a foreign intelligence officer operating under legal cover. My mission here is complete anyway. I've gathered all the information I came for. Over the next several hours, Maya watched her carefully constructed life fall apart and rebuild itself into something new. Terran Intelligence confirmed her identity and mission parameters. The diplomatic corps negotiated agreements about her intelligence activities that satisfied all concerned parties. The Academy's administration grappled with the realization that their weakest student had actually been their most dangerous. But the conversation Maya remembered most was the one with Kaya, who found her in the medical bay where doctors were treating minor injuries from the firefight. "I knew you were hurt," Kaya said softly, her large eyes reflecting genuine sadness. "I could sense the pain you were carrying. But I thought it was trauma, something that had been done to you. I never imagined it was guilt." Maya looked up at the Altarian student who had tried so hard to be her friend. "Guilt? For the things you've had to do, for the people you've killed in service to your species, for the loneliness of carrying secrets that could never be shared." Kaya's telepathic abilities gave her insights that most beings couldn't access. "You weren't traumatized, Maya. You were homesick for a war that was over." The words hit Maya harder than any physical blow. After a moment, she nodded. "I enlisted when I was 11, she said quietly. Lied about my age. Spent 20 years learning how to kill things more efficiently than they could kill me. When the war ended, they didn't know what to do with people like me. We were too dangerous for civilian life, too valuable to waste. So they gave you a new mission, a new identity, a chance to keep serving even when there was no active war to fight." Kaya sat down beside Maya's medical bed. "But you never got to rest, did you? Never got to just be a normal person?" Maya thought about the past 3 years, the constant vigilance, the daily performance of weakness and vulnerability. "I don't know how to be a normal person," she admitted. "I've never tried." "Maybe that's something you could learn," Kaya suggested gently. "Now that your mission is complete, now that you don't have to pretend anymore." Later that day, Maya stood in Administrator Vrex's office, preparing for transport back to Terran space. Her belongings fit in a single military duffel bag. Everything else had been props for a role she no longer needed to play. "I must admit," Vrex said as he processed her departure paperwork, "this experience has been educational. I had no idea human intelligence operations were so sophisticated." "Most beings don't," Maya replied. "We prefer it that way. The students have been asking about you. Thorax in particular seems quite disturbed to learn that he was questioning a decorated war veteran about human weakness." Maya smiled. her real smile, not the nervous expression she had worn for 3 years. Tell him that humans are exactly as weak as we appear to be, right up until the moment we're not. As her transport prepared for departure, Maya took one last look at the Galactic Military Academy, where she had spent 3 years playing the role of the frightened human girl. Her classmates would never know the truth about who she really was, what she had accomplished, or the intelligence she had gathered that might one day save their lives. That was fine with Maya. She had never wanted fame or recognition. She had wanted to serve, to protect humanity's interests, and to prepare for conflicts that might never come. But if they did come, the galaxy would discover what Maya had always known. Humans were far more dangerous than they appeared, and their greatest weapon wasn't technology or physical strength. It was their willingness to sacrifice everything, including their own identities, in service of something larger than themselves. As her ship jumped to hyperspace, Maya Chen closed her eyes and allowed herself to smile. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't have to pretend to be weak. She could finally go home and be the war legend she had always been.